Hey guys, I am going to review watercolor procedures and help you go over a checklist to make sure you're ready to start painting. So this is my sample drawing. It's a little bit plain. It's definitely not done. Let's flip it over and I have our checklist on the back. So the first thing I want you guys to check today is your lines. Are they vertical or horizontal or going towards the vanishing point? That was the rule we talked about. All of your lines should be one of these three, and if they're not, there's a few exceptions. Let's look at my drawing. We'll start with the window. So with my window, the lines are either going towards the vanishing point or they are vertical. So that window is good. Same thing with my bed. Horizontal, 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 towards the vanishing point, and then vertical. So my bed is good. This is obviously an exception. So I drew a vine coming down my wall, and that's going to be one of my metaphors. So this would be one time when I can make an exception for my lines not being vertical, horizontal, or going towards the vanishing point. So that's the first thing I want you to do. Many of you still need to revise your drawings to correct that. Remember, if you have more than one line that is incorrect, that can start to lower your grade. See me if you have any questions about that. Our second thing that we need to check, do you have three metaphors for your identity? So you guys should be able to answer that question very easily after taking your test. If your claim was no, I do not have at least three metaphors, then you need to continue thinking and come up with some more metaphors to add into your artwork today. My answer would be no. I do not have three metaphors, I have one. So I would have some work to do still. Three, the third thing on our checklist. Did you outline all pencil lines with marker and erase? So my answer to that question is yes. Two, I outlined everything with marker, but no, I have not erased my pencil lines. So I would need to take an eraser and go in and get rid of all of those pencil lines before I start painting. If you start painting before you erase all those pencil lines, they're not going to come off anymore. They'll be permanent, and that will make your work look very sloppy, and we don't want that because we won't be able to hang it in the gallery. So I need you guys to take some time and get rid of all of those pencil lines, okay? So that's a little bit better. I'd still do a little more work on that. Finally, if you answer yes to all three of those, you are ready to paint. Some of you might have started painting the other day. You might need to go back and check those again. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more in detail about when we're ready to use our watercolor. So remember, I just picked this up and that cup, that lid was just set on there. It wasn't even clicked on. That's asking for a spill. When we're closing these up, you guys, you have to listen. Hear a click. Now the lid is on all the way, and if this were to tip over, I'm not gonna have a spill, okay? So we need to click those lids all the way on. When you're ready to use a color, pick out the color you want. They're labeled. This is green. I'm going to show you painting a small detail like a vine. I'm going to want a very small paintbrush for something that's small. So I'm going to grab this smallest size brush. With watercolor, liquid watercolor like this, you want to start with a dry brush. Wipe all of the water off of your brush first. If you start with a wet brush, you're going to have a lot of bleeding. That's when you put the paint on the paper and it soaks in and it's gonna go outside of the lines of where you're intending it to go. So I'm gonna show you what will happen if you start with a wet brush, what you don't wanna do. So I have a wet brush. I'm gonna get a lot of paint on there and I'm gonna go and try to paint one of my leaves. Now, I'm gonna show you what happened on the camera. It went outside of the black lines because I had water on my brush and the paint is also wet. So it's actually going to go outside of the lines from where I wanted it to go. So let's show how to paint small details like that without having that happen. Dry your brush off all the way. Just barely dip the brush in that paint. You don't want much. And then just barely dab that paint onto the leaf. So I just painted that leaf there and it stayed inside the lines. I don't even need to get more paint for my next leaf. I'm just gonna use the brush with the same amount of paint on it. And I could paint all three of those little leaf details without going outside of the lines. Okay, let's talk about painting something larger, like the floor. We might want to use, and I'm gonna close up my green because I'm done. Snap all the way on, put it away. And I decided I want to have, I'm going for kind of a funky palette. I'm gonna have a pink floor in this room. So I'm gonna open up my pink paint. Since the floor is a large space, I'm going to grab that larger brush. I'm going to dry it off because I don't want a wet brush. And I got some green paint on my floor. I wasn't being very careful. I had to be careful. And I'm gonna use this brush. It's square shaped, so I can use this brush if I'm very careful to paint right up to that edge without going out of the lines at all. Guys, if it gets on the table a little bit, although you have drawing boards, so that should not be an issue. Now I'm not gonna paint all the way up to the bed with this brush. I'm gonna get a smaller brush to get all of that area right up to the bed. Notice that I'm keeping all of my brush strokes going in the same direction. Once the paint starts to get really light like that, that means I need to dip it into the paint again. But I'm really taking my time, trying not to go outside of the lines, using the flat edge of that brush to get right up to this line right here. And I'm making all of my brush strokes go in one direction, keeping it as neat as I can. Now, if I wanted to make this pink darker, I would probably want to wait until the first layer dries because it's going to look different. In 5 minutes when it's dry, then I could go back in and paint a second layer. So for this area around the bed, I might want to switch to a smaller brush so it's easier for me to get in there without painting on that bed. I do expect you to use different colors for different objects within your room. Everything shouldn't be all painted one color. You really have to just go slowly, use that flat edge of that brush to get right up to your lines, and you shouldn't have any issue with it going over. Now I obviously am going to have some different values around the bed because I overlapped, and that's just going to have to wait till it dries, and then I can do a second layer to try to even out those values. It's pretty hard with watercolor to get all one value, so don't be too frustrated if you don't get that. But again, remember, we're just dipping our brush in a little bit of paint at a time. We don't want to be like getting paint all over the brush and have it dripping all over the place. That's going to get very messy. So again, I'm done with my pink color for right now. I'm going to snap the lid all the way on, and then I'm going to put it back into the red bin so it will not get spilled on the table and we don't have a big mess. So that's it. If you guys have individual questions, I'll be walking around to help you.